I'm your host, Joe Archino, and it is my pleasure to have Tom Giorgi on with us. Tom, it really is a great honor to have you on. We were just talking to the guys before. We've never had the honor of having a Silver Star recipient on the program, so just having you here with us today, it means the world to us, and we're really glad you were able to make it out.
Well, thanks for inviting me, and it's a pleasure for me to be here as well, so thank you.
Now, the people at home, this show is all about letting people hear your story, be able to learn from you and hear what you lived through. So can you take us through a little bit about what your experience was like in the service? When did it happen? How did it happen?
Oh, all right. I was drafted August of '65. I was inducted, but prior to that, I had just graduated from X-ray school in New York at New York Hospital Cornell Medical Center. They hired 4 people out of the class to stay on at the department. I accepted naturally. 10 months later, the letter was in the mailbox when I got home at the end of the day. The greetings letter. I knew I was 1A, and I kind of knew that was going to happen. So I didn't have much recourse but to just accept my fate. I knew I had a 2-year commitment at the time. That's what you had to do. You had to give 2 years to the country, which to me was fine. Plenty of my relatives did it in World War II and Korea. So I reported, went to Fort Dix and, was inducted, went through training. And at the end of training, I was placed in the infantry, which I couldn't understand because I was an X-ray technician, and you would think that the Army would have put me in the medical field, but there's the right way and the Army way. And, when I kept telling them about, I'm an X-ray tech, and they said, well, we don't want you to shoot X-rays, we want you to shoot bullets. So, I went through my training and got orders. At the end of my AIT training, I didn't have any orders. I was what was known as a holdover. For some reason, the class that I was supposed to be sent to, which is an assistant drill sergeant school, something new they were trying back then, I was selected to do that. At the end of it, I would have graduated, was given corporal stripes, a Smokey the Bear cap, and I would have been assigned to work as an assistant drill sergeant with a drill sergeant because they were pushing troops through at an amazing rate at that time. Johnson was really building up things. So for some reason, my name was not on that list, and when the orders came through, they didn't have orders for me. So I was, like I said, a holdover, and I had to wait there until orders came through. And having, been there, I knew what happened to holdovers. They got orders for Vietnam, and that's what happened to me. I was working in the orderly room the day my orders came in, and I saw them. You're assigned to the 1st Cav in Vietnam. So I got 30 days leave, came home, said goodbye to my family on my last day there, which was probably one of the worst experiences of my life, and flew out to California on a commercial plane as an individual replacement. Had to report to Oakland Army Terminal in Oakland, which is what I did. Got put on another plane and flown to Vietnam. 22 hours later, I landed in Saigon, was sent to the 90th Replacement Battalion in Saigon. A day or so later, they called me in. They said, we've got new orders for you. You're being sent to the 25th Infantry Division. You're not going to the 1st Cav. I said, well, who's the 25th Infantry? I didn't even know who they were. They told me they were out of Schofield Barracks in Hawaii. And the unit that I was going to, which was the 3rd Brigade of the 25th, which was a task force that Westmoreland had placed in Pleiku, which is 30 miles from the Cambodian border, because at the time, the only presence in the Central Highlands was the 1st Cav. They were in Anke, which was more to the east. The western part of the Adrang Valley, which is where the Ho Chi Minh Trail filtered into the Central Highlands, there was nobody. So they were coming in unimpeded, and Westmoreland wanted this stopped. So the main division, the 1st and the 2nd, were in Cu Chi. The 3rd, like I said, was an isolated task force, which mission was to stop NVA infiltration. I was assigned to a company B Company in one of the regiments of that brigade. I was put on a machine gun crew, and I spent my time going out on patrols and alternating between base camp and going out on the field on operations. And let me see, 2 or 3 operations later, Operation Paul Revere is actually what it was called. We were out for 28 days the first time, came back for a few days in base camp just to, get showered and some clean clothes because we were wearing the same clothes for 28 days.
I mean, being out in the jungle like that for 28 days has got to be so grueling on your body. And I mean, I can't even imagine what it must be like.
That's what people don't understand is being separated from your family and loved ones is bad enough. Being in a combat situation is bad enough. But when you haven't showered in 28 days and you're wearing the same clothes and the wind shifts, and you can't even stand the smell of your own body, it makes you gag. And you're eating sea rations out of a can like 3 times a day. Maybe they'll chopper hot food in Mermite cans, a couple of times during the week, and you'll get a hot meal at night. But sleeping on an air mattress, sleeping on the ground, going out on ambushes at night where you don't have any overhead cover. You're getting rained on because the monsoon season comes in at a certain time. You're out on an ambush, and you're laying and you're using a rock for a pillow, and the rain is falling on you, but you're so exhausted from patrolling in 110-degree heat all day long, and then they tell you your squad's going out on ambush tonight. You're so exhausted that when you're not up on guard duty, you can fall asleep with your head on a rock with raindrop dripping in your face. That's how exhausted you get. It's just unbelievable what a toll it takes on your body. And like I said, we came back, we got cleaned up, we got resupplied. We were back out for 19 days. And actually, a couple of days before I got wounded on July 3rd, I got called into the first sergeant's tent. And he said, I've got some news for you. He says, we've been getting some flack from your congressman back home. Now, I knew my family was on top of this and trying to get me transferred because I was an X-ray technician. I says, for a sergeant, I said, I hope it's not been, too bad for you. He says, no. He says, it doesn't affect me at all. He says, but you're going to get reassigned. He said, you're not going home. He says, but you're going to leave us and you're going to go and work as an X-ray tech for your remaining time in country. He says, you know how short we are with guys that have been wounded, guys out on R&R. He says, I can't let you go until I have the orders in my hand, which is going to probably take a couple of days. I said, okay, fine. Then what happens? He says, we'll put you on the chopper. You'll go back to base camp. You'll grab your personal gear. They'll fly you to Quin Yon, and you'll sign in there, and then you'll work for 9 more months, and then you'll go home. I was okay with that because I was next up on R&R, and I had Bangkok as my first location. Which when is a 21-year-old guy going to get to that part of the world and be able to go to places like Bangkok, Tokyo, Singapore, Hong Kong, and under those conditions?
Absolutely.
So I was completely okay with all of that. But while I was waiting for the orders, we still had to, do what we were doing. And we were providing security for a tank trail that the armored unit that was assigned to us, 3/4 Cav, they were using that to move rapidly across their area of operation, and we were protecting that. And that one night, 7 NVA came down the trail and got by our ambush points. And the following day, the platoon leader, the late Jasper Sturdivant, he said, we're going out looking for these guys, so, get up. And we went out that night looking for them, but he woke us up at 6 in the morning, and he says, we're going looking for them. Well, we found them, but before we found them, we found a isolated base camp, which we estimated to be a battalion-size forward operating enemy base camp, which was deserted. And none of us liked the feeling that we were getting. It was too quiet. It just didn't feel right. So everybody was going, listen, it's almost lunchtime. Let's get out of here. Let's just go find a nice, safe area. We'll open some C's, we'll eat, and then we'll go looking for these guys later on. We were just leaving the base camp. They knew we were in there. They must have came back and spotted us in there. They prepared an ambush. They sent a couple of decoys in, fired a couple of rounds at our point element. And instead of falling back into a defensive position, which is what we were supposed to do, Lieutenant Sturdivant chose to advance and attack, and we got sucked into an ambush. And within minutes, we were surrounded. There was like 10, 12, there was only 18 of us, and 10 guys were shot, wounded, dying, and that's when I got the Silver Star I was, with a machine. I was the assistant gunner on a machine gun, and I looked to my left, and I saw our squad leader, Sergeant Garcia, laying next to an empty, abandoned foxhole, face down. And I told my gunner Smitty, I said, Smitty, Garcia's down. I got to go try to help him. So I grabbed my 12-gauge shotgun, which was my sidearm. I sprinted across the kill zone of the ambush, jumped in the foxhole, tried to give first aid to him, tried to defend the position. I was taking fire from 2 fortified NVA positions, I found out later. Kept calling for the medic. He was obviously very, very busy because, like I told you, guys were wounded and dying. So finally, Doc Brockington, who was our medic, got to me. I told him what I had found, what I did. I said, "You give me your M16. I've got Garcia's M16. I'll put cover fire down for you so you could work on him." And that's what I did. I had to stand in the foxhole so that I was over. They were laying on their stomachs, and he was working on him. So I had to be up above them and firing across our front to keep the enemy from firing at us, which would allow him to work on Garcia. So obviously the magazines, not like in the movies where they run endlessly. They never run out of ammunition. My magazine ran out of ammunition. I dropped back into the foxhole, changed magazines, and as I was on my way up out of the foxhole, a burst of automatic weapons fire came in, and when I looked up, both Garcia and Brockington were dead. And then I crawled back and reconnected with my machine gunner, and within a couple of minutes, I saw an MBA crawling up on our position. I was pointed my shotgun at him, was just getting ready to pull the trigger, and bang, I got hit. And laying on my stomach, I got shot, believe it or not. I tell people it's better to get shot in the backside than to get shot in the head. The bullet entered my right butt. But the pain that I felt was my left back. And that's how fast a bullet goes through you. I felt the exit wound. I never felt it go in. And as a matter of fact, weeks later, when I was at St. Albans Naval Hospital recovering, I asked one of the doctors, I said, "When are you guys going to go in and take that bullet out of my right butt cheek?" He says, "What are you talking about?" And I says, "Well, the bullet, I can feel it. It's throbbing. It's painful all the time." He says, "There's no bullet in there." He says, "That's where the bullet went in." I says, "What are you talking about?" He says, "The bullet went in there, and it went through your pelvis, and it came out where you've got that big exit wound." Now, I never knew this, but the bullet missed my spine by an inch, and it missed my abdominal aorta by an inch.
Oh my
Went
God.
right between the both of them. If it hit the aorta, I'd have bled to death in 30 seconds. If it hit the spine, I could have been paralyzed. So I literally came within an inch of my life. And we were surrounded by an NVA fortified company, just a little bit under battalion size. We estimated they had about 250 or more. There was 18 of us. The other half of our platoon was separated from us. They tried to get to us, and while they were fighting to reconnect with us, they got ambushed and surrounded. The rescue element was a long way away. As a matter of fact, the Captain Shavy, who was in charge of that, was uncomfortable with where we were being sent, because he said, if they get into any trouble, it's going to take me forever to get to them. He says, "I'm really not happy with this." But the battalion commander, he said, "Listen, I want bodies killed, not counted." He says, send them out at first light. So off we went. And I'd say maybe 4 or 5 hours later, the rest of the platoon, those that were still alive, fought their way through, connected up with us, and then maybe another half hour to an hour after that, the rescue element arrived, led by Captain Shavy and Sergeant Joe Lucas. They had 5 armored personnel carriers with them from 3/4 Cav and 1st Platoon. So they had a platoon of men and 5 armored personnel carriers. They fought their way into the area. The armored personnel carriers, armed with 50 caliber machine guns, were able to break the encirclement of the enemy. We were able to load our wounded onto the APCs, armored personnel carriers. The first one that I was trying to get on, but I couldn't get their attention to get over to me. All of a sudden, guys came flying out of it. It was blown up. I said, God, thank God I didn't get on that one. Then I heard the roar of the engine of another one, and I turned and looked, and it was not too far away. And I said, what about me? What about me? They said, well, you got to get over here to us. So I crawled over. They pulled me on. The thing went maybe 10 feet. Boom, blown up. And it caught fire. I had shrapnel wounds in my back and legs from the inside of the armor that it peels off once it explodes. And the spare gas tank at the rear door exploded, and the entire rear door was engulfed in flames. Everybody was either blown off or jumped off. I was the last one laying on my stomach. I hadn't gotten off my belly all day since I had been shot. And I knew if I didn't get out of that armored personnel carrier, I felt the heat increasing. I said, you're going to cook in here like a Thanksgiving turkey if you don't get your butt out of here. So forced myself to stand up. My pants dropped down to my ankles because they had loosened my belt to get to the hole in the back. It was monsoon season, thank God. My uniform was soaking wet from the rains starting and stopping on and off all day. That saves me pretty much because I had to jump out into the flames. I put my arm across my face. When I got out, my legs were on fire. I hit the ground. I rolled back and forth, slapping at my legs, putting the fire out. The wet shirt and the wet pants at, pretty much 30% of my body had 2nd and 3rd degree burns. But if it wasn't for the monsoons and the fatigues that I had on being wet, covering a good portion of my body, if I had any more than 30%, 50, 40, 60, 70%, I probably would have died because burns, once they get to a certain percentage point, it's really hard to recover from that. And as it is, I almost lost my right leg because the right leg was so badly infected, it wasn't responding to antibiotics. The doctors were considering amputating it, but thank God the antibiotics finally took over and controlled the infection, and luckily I was able to keep my leg. And that was it. I got evacuated from Vietnam on the 5th. I was wounded on the 3rd. On the 5th, I was taken out of there. They said, you're going to Clark Air Force Base. I had no idea why I was going there. I thought I was just going there to get patched up, and then I was going to be sent back to the game. And they kept saying, well, should we call your family? And I said, oh, no, don't do that, because I knew my mother was under a doctor's care, and if she got a telegram or a letter or anybody in a uniform showed up at her door, she would have had a stroke. So I said, no. When I get where I'm going, I'll write a letter. Don't anybody do anything. So when I got to Clark, late in the day, the following morning, I'm laying in my bed, and this big, tall African-American Air Force tech sergeant comes in. He stands at the foot of my bed, and he's looking down at me, and I go, how can I help you, Sarge? He says, I got to figure out where to send you. I go, what do you mean, where to send me? I says, I'm not staying here. I'm not getting fixed up. You got another hospital for me to go to? He goes, yeah, you're going CONUS. I says, CONUS. I says, what does that mean? He says, Continental United States. I says, hold on, back up. Continental United States. I said, you mean like back to the world? Back home? He says, yeah. He says, you got the $1 million wound. I says, what's the $1 million wound? He says, you're hurt bad enough to come out of the game, but you're going to live to tell the story. So the following the following day, I was flown out of Clark. We went to Okinawa, Japan, Traverse in California, then from there to Fort Hood in Texas, stopping and picking up guys all along the way, dropping guys off, picking up guys. When they got to Texas, they tried to take me off the plane, and I was just waking up from a narcotic stupor, and I looked outside and I said, "This doesn't look like New York." And they said, "No, it's Texas." I says, "Well, what are you taking me off the plane for? I'm not going here." He says, "Well, of course you are. You're an Army patient and you're a burn patient, and this is Fort Sam Houston. This is the Army Burn Center. Where else do you think you're going?" I says, "I'm going to St. Albans in New York." I said, "I got orders for New York, and I want to go home because that's where my family is, so don't take me off this plane." I caused such a fuss that this major came over. He wanted to know what the problem was. I explained to him, and I said, "Please, just check the flight manifest, and you'll see that I'm not coming off here." He said, "Everybody stand fast." He came back 5 minutes later. He said, "The soldier's right. He's got orders for St. Albans." He says, "Leave him on the plane." So I'm glad I spoke up, because if I didn't, they would have taken me off the plane. They would have recut my orders, and I'd have been stuck in Texas, and my family would have been up here. I wouldn't have seen anybody. So, and that's actually the best part of recovery when you come out of combat and you've been wounded is being reunited with your family and friends. So,
what was it like when you finally got to see them after what you just went through?
I got there late in the day, and the following morning, guys came over to my bed and they go, "Wow, we heard you in the treatment room. We were ready to send out for flowers," and because they were changing my bandages that night, and I was screaming in pain. So I said, "I'd like to call my family." So they said, "All right, hold on." They had this little payphone that they could wheel over to your bed and plug into the wall. So I made a collect call home, and getting a little choked up just thinking about it. And my mother answered the phone, and I told her, I said, "Mom, I'm home." And they knew that I was coming home, but they didn't know when. You see, Port Chester's a small town. The Red Cross, once I knew I was coming home, that's when I said, "Send the Red Cross in here." The Red Cross came in. I said, "Okay, now you can notify my family." So what they did is they called the Red Cross in Port Chester, and they said, "We just got word that one of your residents is on his way home, Tom Giorgi." Now, the Red Cross in Port Chester, because Port Chester is a small town and everybody knows everybody's business, they knew that Minnie Giorgi was not doing well. So they said, "How are we going to handle this?" So they said, "Well, why don't we call her family doctor, Dr. Masha, who was our next door neighbor." So they called him. They told him what had happened. They said, "We don't know when he's coming home. We don't know how badly he's hurt. All we know is that he's critically wounded and he's on his way home." So he called my sister, and he told my sister, and my sister told my parents. And then, like I said, I spoke to my mother, and she says, "Well, when can we see you?" I said, "You can come out at 2 o'clock today." I said, "Visiting hours are 2 to 8. I told him where we were. My brother-in-law, who was a cop in Rye at the time and was very good at things like that, he says, I'll find it. We'll be there. So at 2 o'clock, I'm looking at the end of I'm on a ward with 25 guys, and I'm down, at the end by the nurse's station, and I'm looking at the door. All of a sudden, I see my sister. And, she's looking and looking. I'm going, "Carol, I'm over here. So she comes sprinting down the hall, followed by my mother and my father and my brother-in-law and this one and that one. And it was quite emotional. But it really was. And every day from that day on, my mother and father were there every day at 2 o'clock. God bless them. And I had developed malaria, was running high fevers. I need to force a lot of fluids. There's only so much water and soda you can drink. So my mother used to bring a gallon of homemade iced tea with her every day in this Seal Test milk bottle. As a matter of fact, I still have it to this day, and it's a prized possession of mine because every day she toted that gallon of fresh iced tea for me because I had to drink plenty of fluids, and that and anything I wanted to eat, they would get for me. But
it's just an incredible story. That's what, to me, means to be an American. Your story of perseverance, standing up for your guys, coming out of the situation, coming back home. It's just incredible, my friend. God bless you. For the people at home, though, who can't even imagine being in that situation, what goes through your mind? How do you overcome that? How do you, standing there, taking enemy fire from an overwhelming superior force, being there for your guys, coming out of it. What goes through your mind during that?
Pretty much not a lot goes through your mind. It's all instinct and training. You almost don't think about what you're going to do before you do it, because if you do, you're pretty much probably dead. So, like I said, when I saw Garcia down on the ground, it was just something inner in me, and it's just because I was in the medical profession. I was becoming an X-ray technician. This is what I wanted to do with my life, was help people. So when I saw him needing help, I knew I had to do something, and I just acted. And lots of times that's what happens in combat. You don't stop and think. You just use your training and your instincts, and you just hope what you're doing is right. Lots of times it is, lots of times it isn't. But it's not an easy thing, combat. I know that I came back a different person than who I was when I left. I struggle with PTSD like we all do. I was the first one from Portchester that was really badly wounded. There were 3 guys that went before me. 2 of them had very, very minor wounds. One guy was a Remington Raider. He had a typewriter job. He didn't get hurt at all. I was hurt so bad that there were actually friends of mine that were calling other friends saying that I was dead, that I was killed in action. And my good buddy was going, no, he's not. He's still alive. He's still with us, and he's going to be home soon. And that's pretty much how the story ends. And like I said, I got a lot of visits from a lot of people, and that helped tremendously. But it was an honor to serve. I'm extremely proud of the Silver Star. It took 46 years to get it, but most of my witnesses were killed before we were separated, because it's not like today where you can find somebody online. Back then, you write a letter home, and then it gets returned, address unknown. Where do you go from there? It's not like it is today. So I was separated from people for like 39 years, and that's pretty much how it ends.
Well, you are most certainly deserving of it. I want to bring you on again another time so we can hear that story again, because I'm sure that's something everyone's going to want to hear. But it's not every day you get to sit in front of a hero, and I consider myself really a great honor to be able to sit with you today. You're an incredible man. God bless you, my friend. Thank you for your time today.